that are happening. So if you feel like you need a little bit more of a background information, like I said, there's these handouts that we made. Would anyone like one who doesn't already have one about what the project is? Okay. Basically, the City of Portland is taking a look at the rules that govern the types of housing permitted in our neighborhoods, and that is to address the issues around growth and change. The proposed changes would allow more housing units to be built in residential neighborhoods. The proposed new rules are with the Planning and Sustainability Commission now. They are expected to vote on their recommendations to City Council in early spring, and the Council will hold public hearings and begin their review by summer 2019. So we heard from some of the neighbors here about potential negative impacts to renters, but also to homeowners. This basically rezones all the single-family zones to allow up to 4 plexes. So that's why we wanted to bring just a few organizations here and hear their perspectives on what's good, what's bad, what can we expect. I've reached out to the Bureau of Planning and Sustainability and the Residential Infill project staff, and they couldn't make it for various reasons. The BPS didn't have the staff to send, and the Residential Infill project staff said that they can't possibly attend all the neighborhood association meetings, so then they choose not to attend any of them. At least that's what they told me. So I just wanted to run some numbers by you about how Portland is changing. So by 2035, Portland will grow by approximately 100,000 households, or 200,000 more people. Our city is becoming more diverse, the population is aging, and average household sizes are decreasing. The cost of housing is rising, and more people are finding it harder to rent or buy a place to live, and there's a lack of diverse housing options being built to serve our needs beyond small apartment units or big, expensive single houses. The way I personally relate to this is I bought my house in 2015, and when I bought it, my realtor said that he wouldn't be surprised if in a couple of years a developer would knock on my door and want to buy the piece of land, because with these changes that we're about to see right now, it would be rezoned to where they could build several apartment complexes just on my little lot. I just have an average size lot, and they could put, I think, they said up to 3 apartment complexes on it. So I guess I'm interested in what that would mean for me too. So with that, let's see, is Meg Hansen here yet? Oh, hi, well. Okay, no worries. Feel free to grab some food or drinks. Awesome. But I was going to ask our guests if they could come and sit up here so that we could see them. So we have Sam Diaz, who just introduced himself with Portland for Everyone. Meg Hansen, who just got here. She's the co-director of the Coalition to Prioritize, Protect, and Preserve Affordable Housing. And you're with other organizations as well, right? Yes. And Janet Baker with United Neighborhoods for Reform. So first, if you could each just very briefly introduce yourselves in terms of what your connection is to this project. And then we can go back again and just say a little more about what your thoughts are.
Well, thank you again for having me. My name is Sam Diaz. My day job is at 1,000 Friends of Oregon. We're a statewide organization working on smart growth outcomes. Folks know us a lot from defending the urban growth boundary, which I like to think of as a belt that keeps this region healthy. Part of that is hearing from farmers and ranchers out in Washington County, out in Yamhill County, of just the growing pressures. They call it spillover from City of Portland, from the metro region. So part of our charge really is understanding and researching and advocating for solutions to protect our working lands. We have Class 1 soils here in Oregon. And so the housing choices, the transportation choices, those all have an effect on our farmers and our ranchers. So a lot of this comes from that pressure. I myself am a renter that makes under the Multnomah County median average. I've lived in Portland for a total of 4 years and lived in 5 places. And so I feel like it's a little bit like musical chairs at this point. That said, there's a lot of loving folks that have opened their homes, and I live with friends and close family friends around Portland. So I've lived everywhere from Southwest Portland, so it's great to have someone from Southwest Portland. Here, I lived in Mountain Park area, and then most recently moved to North Portland. So for me, this is a personal issue. I'm 28, so looking to the future, folks tell me, this will give you a chance to kind of put a down payment on a home. And I'm like, I just kind of want a savings account. But thank you for that generosity. I'll explain a little bit more about the policy and what Portland for Everyone stance is, but that's my kind of personal housing story.
My name is Meg Hansen. My day job is a global systems integration architect and engineer. I'm also a forensic data analyst. A little closer? Is that better? Oh, that's a lot better. How you like me now? I'm also a policy analyst. I'm also a lifelong renter. Native Oregonian, but I moved to the Bay Area for a little while in the late 90s. Moved back here, found a place 15 years ago in Sunnyside when rent was cheap. And I've lived there and seen my neighborhood and the city grow. I myself, along with many other renters, have suffered through many double-digit rent increases, seen bulldozers everywhere, so I got involved in sort of keeping my eye on demolitions, rent increases, policy. My day job lends itself just as a sort of a wonk to sort of the nuances of policy and where affordability and preservation can intersect. And as a sort of a systems engineer, but also a former bureaucrat, I also understand that bureaucracies are really bad at systems thinking. And so my approach is to sort of try to see how where common ground meets the nuances of policy, and where regulation is a necessary countermeasure to things like land use deregulation.
I have a shorter history, even though later. So I'm by training a natural resource analyst, actually a forester by training, and I continue to do work on natural resource issues, primarily Indian water rights and some of the agricultural issues surrounding that. I live in Beaumont. I am a homeowner. I bought my house 30 years ago, which I know it was a cheap house. I didn't go buy anything that I couldn't afford. But in contrast to today, where interest rates are down around 4 point something percent, interest rates were 12% when I bought my house. So keep that in mind when you compare house prices too over time. I live in Beaumont. Beaumont has a pretty big range of incomes and housing sizes. The street I live on, most of the houses are, I would say, between 11 and 1,400 square feet. So over the years, there's been a lot of house flipping in Beaumont, which is primarily, you take a house like mine, 1,100 square feet, the small-time remodeler buys it, they cosmetically fix everything up and flip it to me for twice the price in 4 months. That was very common for about the first 15 or 20 years that I lived in Beaumont. I've lived there for 30 years. The other thing that was going on is a lot of homeowners, people living in the houses, not developers, were making their houses bigger. I mean, a 1,200 square foot house is a small house to live in if you have 3 kids. So a lot of people were taking houses like mine and putting a second story on them. So that was really common. But I would say about 6 or 7 years ago, all of a sudden, developers were coming into my neighborhood, buying houses and demolishing them, and building a house that was 2 to 3 times the size of the original house and 2 to 3 times the price of the original house. And that was happening more and more frequently. At first, we just thought it was a one-off kind of situation. So a group of us literally met in someone's living room in January of 2014 and said, hey, we've got to talk to the city about this. And we're really concerned about demolitions. We're concerned that the demolitions are happening without even the neighbors even knowing. I mean, literally, a family could sell their house to a developer. The neighbors might not even know it was going to be demolished, and you wake up to a bulldozer next door. I mean, that's how bad it was. So UNR got its start in Beaumont, but, and I'll talk a little bit more about this later on, but we quickly moved to talking to other neighborhoods because although we were hit hard and we were hit early, about 2014 or 2015 is when it really took off in other neighborhoods as well.
Okay, great. So I really want to give people here a chance to ask questions and ideally have a discussion. So with that, I want to give it back to you guys and tell us the perspective of your different organizations on the residential infill project, but just keeping it so fairly short.
I prepared a presentation to show a checker. Is that Yeah, I think the framework was, and not to disrupt this, but the framework was 10-minute presentations and talk to the city. I brought it on USB and if I can go second, you're going to present.
But we can do it, so.
So then I can both after this week, the deck and maybe we can work on the back while it's
Okay, just technical issues. So if we're gonna get started, and feel free to mention anything that I haven't mentioned yet, where you might want to fill in the gaps on what the residential infill project is, and then your perspective, but just keeping it focused on Lents, and then keeping it very specific to homeowners and renters and all that, in addition to your own perspective. I would love it if it could be under 5 minutes each so that we can also have a discussion. And I might have to cut you guys off if you go for too long, so there's that. Okay.
So that was, the context you heard really set the stage for Portland for Everyone. Mayor Hales convened a stakeholder advisory committee. Thank you for your service. My boss, Kyle McCurdy, was on that committee as well. And so a year into that process, there were a series of recommendations that the committee had developed, and three key questions that the committee was trying to address. The first was, as you heard, really the size, the scale of homes that were being built. Story after story, you heard about homes being demolished, and in the ashes, out would go a large single-family home. The next was this need for diversity of housing. So as Sabina mentioned, family households, and I use family in a loose term, but family households are shrinking according to the U.S. Census Bureau. And so what does that mean for the kinds of housing that we currently have in the city of Portland? Do we need kind of different types of housing? And so the city was grappling with, okay, with changing demographics, with different household sizes, what do we need to build? And then the third, of course, was housing affordability, and really tied to housing availability. So in those kind of three key questions, Portland for Everyone Coalition came together. There's a sheet being passed around of the logos. So if folks are interested in who makes up the coalition, it's coming around through that table. So it's a series of community organizations like Safe Routes to School and Oregon Walks, and 1,000 Friends. It's affordable housing developers like Rose CDC, Hacienda CDC, Proud Ground, who does community land trust model. And so there were home builders are part of the coalition as well. So it was a diverse coalition. And so up until now, the Portland for Everyone Coalition has been meeting with neighborhood associations, researching the policy recommendations to improve upon those 3 questions. And in the wake, we've seen so many renters being this musical chairs kind of scenario. So many renters being pushed around our region, and now, I now have listening sessions in Woodburn and Infill County because we're being priced out of the region. So, kind of fast forward to today, as Sabina mentioned, the Planning and Sustainability Commission voted 5-4 to approve the residential infill project. 3 of them explicitly said, we want to send a strong signal to City Council and show that while the residential infill project reduces the displacement of the low-income renters living in single-family households, it doesn't end displacement. And it doesn't get to this other question, which is how do we create affordability? So how do we create choices for renters who have been priced out to have the option to come back? Those are different questions than the 2015 committee sought to address. And so those are other policies. So where the coalition has landed is, this is moving forward, this is getting us in the right direction, this is reducing displacement. We can get more housing options, so if folks want to build a duplex or a triplex instead of the single-family home on that lot, this is a great kind of solution to that. And then I think the other thing is the houses will be less expensive than these single-family homes. I mean, they're going for, the price points better than I, but if you go on Redfin, you go on Zillow, they're going $1 million plus. And so the thinking is that duplexes, triplexes, because the developer and the city staff showed this, the developers have shown this, duplexes and triplexes and fourplexes will be cheaper than the single-family home that would be built in the wake of a demolished home. One thing, and Sabina mentioned this, is I want to tie it to Lents and why I'm so excited to be here and pass over the mic to you all after listening to our other panelists, is Lents is one of the 3 neighborhoods where there is a small, and I printed out the memo for you all because I want to be very clear. There is a small uptick, and that means like 6 to 25 households here. If you are a single-family renter living in if you are a low-income renter living in a single-family home, please come see me after this. I would love to talk to you. And that is the small uptick that could result if residential infill project is passed. So to be clear, if the residential infill project passes, there will be about 6 to 25 low-income renters living in single-family homes that could be at risk of what's called, the city calls it indirect displacement, than if residential infill project wasn't passed. So that is unique to Lents, to East Montevilla, and to Brentwood, Darlington. And so I want to be very clear and kind of cue up a conversation about how do we protect our most vulnerable residents, how do we protect renters, the other piece of this is taking a citywide approach is this reduces the amount of low-income renters living in single-family homes who are at risk of displacement. So overall, this kind of provides stability to over 250 low-income renter households living in single-family homes. If RIP is not passed, those renters would, as you've heard, would face housing instability. So again, Portland for Everyone, just to be clear, we're supportive of the residential infill project as proposed, and we hope that we can generate other solutions because City Hall, during budget conversations, during other policy opportunities, can consider and should consider kind of a solution to this low-income renter issue that we should all be grappling with.
Yeah, so I apologize. There's just a technical hiccup where I talked to Megan about the presentation tonight, and she had indicated that she might want to do a PowerPoint, but then I just for some reason wasn't sure that it would still be needed because we didn't connect before the start of the meeting. So we haven't had a chance to set it up before, and right now we're missing a cord and stuff. So. Unfortunately, and I'll take responsibility for that. Meg prepared some slides that she wanted to share.
I'll just tell you,
But,
it was standing ovation quality, but you're not going to see it.
Sorry about that.
So I have a projector here. I can have it set up in 3 minutes if Janet wants to go first.
Awesome. Well, we can start. Okay. Maybe we can just start. We can think, and then, or you know what? Okay. We could do community announcements now.
Yeah, that's
This is kind of truncated, but it's the best we could do at this point. Yeah. So that we can do this right, because our guests have prepared, and they have stuff they want to share with us, and we can at all accommodate it. Let's do that. So hold that thought from everything that Sam just said. Let's set up a projector. And does anyone have any announcements they would like to share with the community? Raise your hand, and then I'll come to you with the mic. Yes.
So this upcoming Saturday at the Mount Scott Community Center, we're having a Renters' Rights Trade with the Community Alliance of Tenants. There will be English and Spanish translation service on site. There's food, childcare. It's ADA accessible. It's just right there at 72nd and Herald.
Hi everybody, I'm Renata. I'm a volunteer for Green Lents, and I wanted to let you know about an upcoming event. It's the Green Lents Garden Swap. It will take place on Saturday, April 6th, so not this coming Saturday, but the Saturday after. And so the premise of that, if you've never been, is that if you have extra gardening items like plant starts or seeds or tools, soil, pots, what have you, around the house, you can come and bring your stuff and then swap them with other people's stuff that are all gardening related. Or you can just bring your stuff if you have extra stuff and want to donate them to other people who may need them. Or if you have nothing to swap with, you can come and just take whatever you feel like are useful for you. So this is a good event for people who are really interested in gardening and want to just start doing it or learn more. It's sponsored by Zager Farm is providing the space, so that's where it will take place. It's 11 to 3 p.m. Saturday, April 6th, and it's also sponsored by Portland Nursery, so they'll be there to provide educational materials and be sort of like the gardening experts. We'll also be selling native plants and have some fun kid activities. So it's just a fun event coming up in the neighborhood for you to kind of be aware of. We're also coordinating the neighborhood garage sale, and the date for that will be July 27th. So if you're really excited and want to save the date, you could write that down. Otherwise, you'll see more of that information floating around the internet, and I'll probably come back and kind of talk more about that event. Or if the LNA want to, kind of join forces and together organize the garage sale, we could do that together. So I'll have extra flyers for the garden swap over by the check-in table, so if you're really interested and want to take a copy, you're welcome to. Thanks.
Thank you. Anyone else? Looks like we're making progress with the projector. We might have to dim the lights pretty soon, so get ready for that. I can make an announcement. Our Neighborhood Association Board is looking for more board members. If you are interested, send us an email at lentsneighborhood@gmail.com. Right now, positions open are mostly at-large board members, but we have quite a few openings. We're working on various projects, and we could definitely use more people who want to take initiative and do things. Yeah. I can keep talking. Oh, yeah, ready? Okay. I'm going to try to dim the lights a little bit.
All right, so I'm going to cut this in half. The first part was sort of some context, some background. I feel like any discussions about housing policy also need to sort of take a look back at the first housing bubble, what happened from 1999 when Glass-Steagall was repealed until 2008 when that first bubble crashed because of financialization, speculation, flipping, all that good stuff. But we've already been there and that's familiar, so that was the first half. This is what a bubble looks like. We're going to talk about that and kind of center ourselves on where we're at now. And I'll just sort of start this by saying that in 2012, where you can see the sort of one price index start to recover, that's when Blackstone created a brand new financial product called rent-backed mortgage securities. Same thing, but with multifamily housing. So we're going to skip ahead here. First we're going to kind of set some basic understanding here. So when we talk about affordability, this is what affordability with a capital A looks like. Housing needs, constraints, and cost burden defined by the HUD standard of affordability, which is percentage of median family income. This is very important to understand when we're talking about real affordability rather than relative to whatever the market will bear. There are far more people in need of housing below 60% of median family income than those that can afford to buy or rent at the top of the market, which is about 120% median family income and above. And this is the problem. There is no housing crisis per se, there is only an affordable housing crisis. New construction is surpassing the need for market rate housing and woefully failing to meet the need for lower income supply. In fact, tens of thousands of luxury market rate units are staying vacant, while an increasing number of people are being displaced, forced to live in their cars or worse. The housing supply has been inverted by a market rate housing boom. So let's talk about the root causes. Displacement caused by speculative real estate investment and gentrification are the cause of the lack of affordable housing supply. When prices are raised to whatever the market will bear, the demolition of affordable housing, of existing affordable housing is unrestricted, lower income families are priced out, and that affordable supply no longer exists. Meanwhile, the housing market bubble is yielding exorbitant rates of return for investors. Market rate housing does not trickle down into affordable housing. In fact, it can take up to 30 years for those units to attain some semblance of affordability long after they've lost their luster, while displacement, homelessness, and suffering happens in real time without the luxury of waiting it out. An equitable solution understands the root cause, mitigates displacement, and mandates affordability to relieve the crisis rather than exacerbating and perpetuating it. So what you see here is a combination not only of inclusionary housing, demolition exceptions, adaptive reuse, infill, but also restricting demolition so that we can actually shape development into what we want and what we need instead of developers' choice. So a balance of regulations, incentives, and demolition review is the solution that takes inverted supply and shapes it back into an envelope that meets the goal of providing housing for all income levels and requiring, rather than merely requesting and hoping that development meets density and affordability goals.
I'm going to whiz through this. So I think I already gave you some background on where UNR came from. And once we kind of figured out that it wasn't just a Beaumont issue, we met with, we actually had 4 citywide summits and invited all the neighborhoods from across the city to come. Because we weren't really sure what all the issues were. You know, was it, our issue was about demolition. For a lot of people, it was about affordability or density. A lot of concerns about the environmental issues with demolitions and also the environmental issues of taking away a lot of green space by building bigger homes or building multiple homes on one piece of land. So quickly realized, like I said, it was a citywide issue. We took these 4 citywide summits. We took all the comments that we got during those and put together what we called the UNR resolution. And we took that out to neighborhood associations, and 43 neighborhood associations signed on to the resolution. There's no legal meaning to that, but you know, they approved us showing their name as a signee. With that, we went to the city and said, look, you know, all these neighborhoods have these concerns. And that was really what got the RIP process going. They put together the task force that we asked for. Okay, I don't need that yet anyway, but the resolution included a lot of the environmental concerns, particularly asbestos and lead issues associated with the actual demolitions. We found the city was really resistant to doing anything about that, and we realized that, so we basically took it to the state level and got some new laws passed that will help with the demolition, the actual demolitions. But the other big part of the UNR resolution was to ask the city to revise the building codes to limit the mass, the footprint, the setbacks, and the height of construction of new buildings, of new houses. And we proposed that those constraints should be based on adjacent houses. So, for example, on my street that has basically 1,200 square foot houses, you might say, okay, well, you can build 50% or 100%. We didn't really propose a percentage, but there would be some context to it. So if you were building in the middle of a neighborhood that had, you know, 3,000 square foot old Portland style fourplexes, you know, maybe you could build a 3,000 square foot new construction and it would fit right in. But we always believe that it should not be a one-size-fits-all solution. But what's come out of RIP is a one-size-fits-all solution. Okay. All right. So this comes directly, this chart here comes directly from the latest version after the PSC got done with it of the RIP plan. So we're going to focus on the R5, the middle column there. Basically 5,000 square foot lots, although you can be in an R5 and not have a 5,000 square foot lot. So without the bonus for affordability, the limit for the 5,000 square foot house is 3,500 square feet. What am I doing here, John? I'm supposed to just hit.
Move your mouse just away from
Oh, I was trying to use the arrows. How come it isn't working? Oh, there we go. Okay, so John made these nice charts to show where Lents, to give some context to Lents. So for Lents, you can see that, and so there's the upper chart is the size of housing, the square footage of the housing, and the lower chart is the height. So the upper chart, it shows that basically 50% of the houses are the yellow line, no, the blue line, I'm sorry, about 1,100 square feet or less. You have to go all the way out to 90%. 90% of the houses in Lents are under 1,978 square feet. Now bear in mind that the RIP standard is 3,500 square feet. So you're talking about an area where almost all the housing is well under 2,000 square feet, and yet RIP would allow buildings of 3,500. No, that's okay. 3,500 square feet. And likewise, going down to the height chart, 90% of the housing in Lents is consultant that the city hired to do an economic analysis of the RIP plan. The assumption in the Johnson report is that developers will build to that max. And if you look at what they've built so far in Portland, you can see that's the case. So I was not all that familiar with Lents other than the main drags, coming from Northeast. I drive down 82nd all the time. I'm on Powell, I'm on Woodstock. But I spent some time in the rain yesterday driving around just to familiarize myself with the housing. And so I took a number of slides, really more for myself. I mean, you guys, for the most part, live in Lents. But so this first slide is a house on... Pardon me? Yeah, I see it, you guys. Okay. Yeah, 85th Avenue. It's a very well-kept house. I mean, I looked online afterwards. The inside's gorgeous. It's on a 6,000, almost 6,100 square foot lot. It's in the R2.5 zone. It was built in 1952. It sold for $325,000 just a matter of months ago. The next slide is on 87th Avenue. It's a little under 1,200 square foot house, 3-bedroom, 2-bath in the R5 zone. Sold for $265,000 in December of 2016, so a little over 2 years ago. Another one on Raymond Court, built in 52 in the R5 zone, 2-bedroom, 1-bath, 6,000 square foot lot. Last sold for $325,000. That's 6 months ago. So, so I wanted to show those three to me kind of represent housing that it's hard to call it affordable. I kind of start using the term relatively affordable because everything in Portland is so expensive. But it's the kind of pricing of some of the units, if you look at the Johnson report or some of the prices that you mentioned for fourplexes and stuff are in that same kind of category. So there are a lot of single-family homes in Lents that are on prime lots. And as Sabrina mentioned, developers are looking for those kind of lots. So I think there's a lot of potential for demolition here. And then the next slide is a single-family home, obviously a newer one, 4-bedroom, 2-bath, over 2,000 square foot, but well within the RIP standard, sold for $410,000 about a year ago. And Zillow estimates it's now about $472,000. This is on a 3,500 square foot lot in the R5 zone. Kind of notice the house just to the right of it, how it just dwarfs that house. And this is still well within the RIP standard for a single family home of the new house. It's under 2,500 square feet, and yet it really dominates over that little house next door. So you can imagine after you get a number of these houses and you're the little house squeezed in between and you have, no privacy and no sunshine. This is a set of 3 skinny houses on steel built in 2012, 1,440 square feet. The lots are less than 1,200 square feet, so there's very little yard. The most recently sold one was about 2 years ago, sold for $330,000. Okay, all right, just one. Okay, this is a 6-plex from Renaissance, and you're only seeing 3 of the units. It's on Northeast 58th, just about a half block north of Burnside. So it's a 6-plex. They tore down 2 houses to make this. Both houses were duplexes. So they tore down 4 units to get 6. They're about 1,200 square feet, 2-bedroom, 2-bath. And the asking price when they went on the market was well over $600,000. Again, it completely swamps the houses next door. But I'll cut out at this point because I know we're over time.
to questions from the floor. Yeah, if you want to speak or to ask a question, raise your hand and I'll come to you in the order in which you raise your hand. And then if you've already spoken tonight and someone else raises their hand, I'll probably skip you and go to them. So.
Thank you. So I've been to a number of these presentations, and only occasionally do you hear people talk about root cause, and they blame it on speculation, what the market will bear, but they never address the actual cause. It is simply impossible to build affordable housing on $1 million or $2 million an acre land. And that is what the 1,000 Friends of Oregon has given us with their policy of restraining the supply of land. Now, most people, but apparently not the 1,000 Friends, know from grade school economics that price is set by supply versus demand. State of Oregon and Metro, with the encouragement of 1,000 Friends, has cut off the supply of land. As our gentleman tonight put it, made a belt around the area. And we are bulging at the seams, and that is reflected in price. If you pay $1 million an acre for land, and you want to build an ordinary classic Portland house, you're looking at $120,000 for the land. Now the city of Portland, since they realize they have a monopoly here, and they don't face competition from stuff outside of Beaverton, etc., because you can't build out there, is holding you up for another $50,000 for permission to build on the land you own. Now we're up to about $175,000. You know, that amount of money will buy you a really nice brand new house in a lot of areas that do not have the 1,000 Friends of Oregon style land use control. And I think that pretty much sums it up. Our problem is not affordability, it's government policy. Thank you.
Thank you. And one thing I forgot to mention, so we'll have about 15, 20 minutes for this discussion. If everyone could keep their comments to no more than 2 minutes, that way we can have more people speak. Now I'll pass it on to Ed. This is actually a topic that Ed proposed for this meeting.
So one thing I would like to have the panel address is the fact that the city no longer with this RIP will have any single-family residential zones. I currently live up in the Mount Scott area. My lot is over 10,000 square foot. I'm zoned R7. But that doesn't mean anything because you can build houses down to what, maybe 5,000 square foot on an R7. So why doesn't the city just get rid of the R zone? And as Megan said, we already have all these apartment zones already, and we have all these vacant units. And I see it downtown, like in the Pearl District. I don't understand how this is going to help, I guess, affordability, as you mentioned. But again, it just bothers me to see that we're not going to have any more R single-family zones. When you can build fourplexes on my lot. So I don't know if you can address that, or what the thinking is, because the initial proposal was to only allow up to 3plexes, and then the planning commission wanted to make it 4plexes, and then the vote, as you mentioned, was 5-4, and the chair was she voted yes, but not really, and she had a lot of concerns. So, because right now we can have ADUs, etc., so we can increase the density on our lots. I don't see why we have to go to 3plexes and 4plexes. I guess we could address that.
Yeah, thanks for the question. And I think there's been a lot of ways that people are putting the residential infill project. So to be clear, it is not eliminating single-family zoning. It's just providing more options. So if if you're a homeowner and you don't want to build a duplex or a triplex, if you don't want to sell your home, this zoning isn't going to change that. It just provides more options. So if you are in R2.5, sorry, I'm gonna get wonky, R2.5, 5, 7, if you're in the 3 residential zones, this project would say, okay, you now have some options. You can build a duplex, a triplex, a fourplex. On some spaces, you can build an additional ADU. But it's up to the property owner to really decide what makes sense for them. In terms of the housing affordability, and this is why I printed out the staff memo and specific to Lents. Right now, the monthly rent and the monthly mortgage payment here in Lents is about 90% of your median family income. And city staff said, okay, how many, and you saw the dots on the map, how many, what's the likely amount of homes that would be demolished, and then what would be the prices, so what would be your monthly rent or your monthly mortgage payment of the homes that come online, duplexes, triplexes, if that were to happen, if the property owner chose. And they found that it was around 90% MFI. So it's interesting, it's not like a Mississippi situation we have here in Lents. We're getting more housing that is of comparable monthly rent, monthly mortgage payments. We're just getting more of it. And I think going back to the 3 questions that the project sought to address is really the types of housing that we're trying to create. So again, it's providing options for property owners to build the duplexes, to build the triplexes, because we don't have that kind of missing middle housing. We don't have that housing. So, I mean, let me see your question. But give it over to Meg for the counterpoint.
So I mean, I understand what you're saying. Like, this is an overlay, so the R zone still exists, but in effect, and a lot of the narrative talks about abolishing single-family zoning. But so there are some points that sort of in concept we can agree on, and that is if the only thing that is permitted to be built in an area is a single-family home, then that's the only thing that's going to proliferate. And therefore, there's not going to be added housing that's growing that is for renters, that is, fourplexes. And some of the places, like I live in a neighborhood that, where things were built and filled in from the turn of the century all the way up until the 50s and 60s. The conundrum here, though, is that land use, deregulation in general, especially land use, especially because God isn't making any more land, and we're not talking about widgets. And so if we're going to deregulate and basically increase the speculative value of the dirt, that doesn't mean, number one, that a developer will have to build a fourplex. It doesn't also, there's no requirement that be affordable. They will build to whatever envelope and to whatever to maximize profit. That's just the way it is. So part of the solution to where those things can and should intersect is that if we are going to allow different types of housing to proliferate, and we don't want it to be at the expense of demolishing existing affordable housing, then we need a basket of regulations that are tethered to one another. And RIP is not tethered to any mandates of affordability. So for instance, and I'll make this brief, if there were a reasonable threshold for demolition, so if a developer could not just develop anything they wanted by right, and if they couldn't just, if there were restrictions on developing or on demolishing sound habitable housing, unless it met strict exception criteria tethered to the HUD standard of affordability and needed housing, then we wouldn't have developers just being able to gobble up existing affordable units, build whatever they want with no restrictions. So RIP is lacking that tether fundamentally, and when you increase the speculative value of a land and you don't have a regulatory countermeasure, what you get is exacerbating the existing affordable prices. We cannot mitigate gentrification and displacement by fueling it, period.
I want to add to that. From UNR's perspective, this is sort of helter-skelter middle housing. The concept of middle housing in urban design, if you just Google the term middle housing, you will come up with a design picture which BPS also uses in the Infill, residential infill reports. And what it looks like is a transition So you have your apartments that are right on the main corridors, then you might have townhouses, then you might have duplexes, and literally, it scales down to the single-family neighborhoods, and that's what the term means in urban design. And yet, we're using the term in a completely not the way it really is used in urban design. We're using it to describe the kind of housing, the fourplexes and duplexes, but it wasn't meant to be a single-family street with all of a sudden a fourplex in the middle of the street. And part of the reason for the correct use of the term middle housing transitioning is because of transportation corridors. And we should be putting the density where the transportation corridors are, not just mid-block, a mile from the nearest rapid transit option.
Thank you. Okay. So we might not have time for every single panelist to address every question, and I think in order to make room for more, again, like if everyone could keep their comments/questions to under 2, and then also our guests, if they could answer just very briefly, maybe like a minute or so. Or maybe you don't have a question, maybe you just want to make a comment, that's fine too.
Hi, I have 2 things I'm wondering about. So first of all, I am a low-income person, and my family owns a home in Lents. And so one of the things that always bothers me is the huge tax inequity that we pay higher assessed value here in Lents. So we're already kind of getting screwed on that. And I also had considered putting an ADU on my property, but because the rules have changed to be so anti-landlord, and I can't afford to be stuck paying someone's, like if I get someone who's a horrible tenant, I can't get stuck paying 3 times their rent for them to kick them out. So I'm wondering why we don't work on things like that to help, because most of the homeowners in Lents are the lower income people. So why are we not helping them stay in their homes more, lower the taxes, help us stay in our homes, and help us maybe be landlords without penalizing us if we do get a bad tenant? Because I know you said the orange houses where they're non-owner occupied, but a lot of those people that are landlords want to sell those houses now because they know they don't want to get screwed by the anti-landlord rules. So that's a huge question I have. And then my other question is, if you have a bunch of fourplexes go in, we have bad roads, bad sidewalks. Is anything going to, so obviously that's going to be a lot more people in a certain area. So my second question is there going to be some sort of money that they're going to have to put in for road improvements and parking too? Or are they going to have parking? And are we going to just taking more away from the people who are already here in order to give to someone who's not, not that I don't want to help the people get homes, but I don't want to get screwed either.
Okay, so which one of you would like to address that?
All right. I think what I hear you talking about, there's a bunch of things. It all resonates. You're talking about can our infrastructure support all of this added density and really sort of just to be brief, just in sort of an overall theme where all of those things you're talking about connect. It is that there's a lot of policy, again, because bureaucracy is so myopic and fragmented, where there's all of this putting the cart before the horse. We've got RIP going before anti-displacement. We've got all this new construction going, on top of crumbling infrastructure. We have low-income homeowners, cost-burden renters, and cost-burden homeowners who really want and need to stay in their homes. And so, where's that balance between doing right by the people that live here currently and tearing apart our communities to build new housing and to build new financial instruments for people that haven't yet arrived. And I know that doesn't answer your question, but does that at least kind of validate where you're coming from? I don't have any answers in terms of what the city's going to do and how they're going to solve those problems. But I think that they should put the horse before the cart.
Exactly, I was
Yeah.
told the department it is the cart before the horse.
I just want to add to that, that as RIP has evolved through several iterations, the last one being with the planning commission, there no longer are any requirements for parking in this infill housing. And the second thing is, I just wanted to,
There's no, so they're gonna have four apartments and not require any, yeah. So if someone like me is disabled, who already has a hard time finding parking, I'm gonna be Fourth Street. Yeah.
well, the other thing I wanted to comment on is your comment about the higher property taxes in Lents, which is very true. It's been written up a number of times. But, this is not a very progressive state in many ways. And there are states that base or adjust property taxes based on income. Vermont is an example of that. So if someone has a house that they've had for a long time and property taxes have gone up, at least they're given some relief from that, either based on income or age or both. And so I think that's something that Oregon should look at.
Jason, did you have your hands up? It's Jason, and then what was your name?
Hi, I'm not sure if you can answer this or not, but I live right down the street, a few blocks away on 85th. There was, a few months ago, a house across the street from mine went up for sale. The flyer that was out there for the listing said that because of the zoning for that house, this was a standard lot, 40 by 100. It said that they could put up to a 33-unit complex on that lot. I looked at that and I couldn't believe it. I mean, still question it just saying it, but I talked to the person who was there for the open house. She couldn't believe it either. She was selling the house, but thankfully that didn't happen. Do you know anything about that? And obviously that would bring up the same issue with the parking with the 4-lot, but way more extreme. I don't know what it's on it's like basically a house away from where the El Nutritag is, so it's business owned right
There
there.
was a mistake on the flyer.
Yeah, it's high density stuff on it.
Who wants to answer
We
this one?
already have capacity with current zoning, by the way.
Just one. Which one of you wants to answer or address that?
Yeah, repeat that.
I'll do it, yeah, I'll do it. Go ahead.
Well, I just feel like it's not fair to respond because it's in a different zoning than what we're talking about.
But that's,
So he said it's not, really it's off topic because we're talking about residential infill and the differences, but I will make it on topic by saying that, there is already enough capacity to meet the projected, influx of people. There's already enough capacity within the urban growth boundary. The problem is that urban planners say, well, it's not in the right place. Within, let's create more urban centers, and so let's create these complete communities. And I don't necessarily disagree with that, but when it comes to how we execute that and at what cost, if we either take out a giant eraser, or, where I come from in systems design, it's really important that we align things and that we lay a foundation so we do no harm. And I think that's still possible. But, that's...
On the capacity issue, in December of last year, Metro expanded their urban growth boundary in 4 areas. So I do think we have to, City of Portland goes off these models. I'm not a modeler, but they say, we have enough capacity, and yet at the same time, we're expanding the urban growth boundary in 4 areas.
Homeowners Association for that.
So I think it goes back to your point of the decisions we make inside the urban growth boundary. If we're super protectionist over single-family homes and large lots, and we're going to have this conversation about housing supply in the the city of Portland and housing affordability. So I think it's those conversations around rezones, that is, and going back to the last question around potentially predatory, lending practices or kind of predatory, people could be knocking on your door and saying, we hope to buy this because of duplex, triplex. And so what are the programs that the city can invest in to make sure that low-income homeowners and Lents have an informed decision and that it is voluntary. Some of you may want to sell if this project passed, if all the projected outcomes pass, but it's an informed decision.
I'm just itching, please. I had no off switch.
Okay, Doug is next.
You've got people on the side of the room too. Okay, thank you.
All right. I just wanted to note that the written proposal reduces displacement across the city. Out of the 135 census tracts, there's only 15 of them where it doesn't reduce displacement.
But that hasn't happened yet.
Right, that's our best, that's the best prediction.
That it will,
But-
maybe perhaps.
But should we not do this, just have all those 135 census tracts not have a reduced risk of displacement?
So the question is, should we not do this and put them at risk of displacement?
In other words,
Should we keep the status?
right, in other words, the proposal is better than the status quo. It reduces risk in most of the city. Displacement. They increased it in like 5 tracts out of the 150, reduced it in the other 440. So, is it a trade-off? Is it a trade-off worth it to reduce the displacement risk in most of the city?
So there's a school of thought that says the invisible hand of the market will by itself, without the need for regulation, just because developers will sort of migrate around and pick and choose by virtue of the incentives that we give them. And that's this sort of predictive model that says we predict that if we deregulate through this land use deregulation, that it will mitigate displacement without the need for regulatory countermeasures. And then there are people like me that say, well, past is prologue, and that hasn't worked so well in the past. But I do believe that there's an opportunity to tether up zoning with some very straightforward regulations that force developers to pick the weeds first. So for instance, if there were reasonable restrictions on demolition, so restricting the demolition of sound habitable housing unless it meets strict exception criteria, that steers developers to demolish that which is unsound, that which is uninhabitable. Right now, they can demolish anything they want, and they're demolishing the low-hanging fruit of rental housing, and that causes displacement. And there's nothing in RIP that says they can't keep doing that. And so we either incentivize it and we hope, or we create regulations. And also a demolition restriction would also prevent developers from hoarding vacant land, which they do right now. They buy a house, they tear it down so that their holding costs are cut in half, and they hold on to it, and then they flip it. I don't like that. So I don't think that we need that the status quo isn't working. And part of the reason why it isn't working is we're not mandating affordability, and we have no restrictions on the demolition of existing affordability. And we have very weak anti-displacement regulations. So we can tether up zoning so that it actually creates filling in, instead of redevelopment and replacement, so that it drives development to pick the weeds of that which is uninhabitable, unsound, surface parking lots and all that kind of stuff, then we're talking.
Well, hopefully your prediction will work better.
Well, I don't have to be right. That's the other thing. I'm just not on board with deregulation that has no anti-displacement regulations in place whatsoever, and neither are 4 members of the Planning Sustainability Commission.
Okay, so we probably have time for maybe one more question or so. Okay.
One quick comment and then a question. Affordability was never one of the criteria or goals of the residential infill project. It crept into the discussions, but it was never a stated goal of the residential infill project. Second, you talked about home ownership. Somebody building a fourplex on their lot, if that's what they wanted to build. Neighborhoods like Lents are the avenues to home ownership for many people. Lower cost homes, or that are available and affordable. Who is going to be the long-term owner of a fourplex? Is it going to be the resident trying to be the landlord for 3 other people? Or is it going to be an out-of-town, out-of-district, out-of-state owner? That's the premise.
Thanks for the clarification on the committee goals. I think I can't, and this is why we go out to these meetings, is, we can't state a goal for the city of Portland. We should not be in that position. It's through this kind of discourse, these conversations, to ask the question exactly of what are the guiding goals, what are the guiding questions that our city should be tackling, what are the priorities? If the conversation focuses on, I'm happy we're having this conversation focusing and prioritizing low income, the most vulnerable in our city. And if that were a goal of the Stakeholder Advisory Committee, I wonder what kind of other budget investments, other policies the Stakeholder Advisory Committee would recommend alongside it. So, I think there are so many of you on the committee that have institutional knowledge, have understandings of City Hall and the priorities of Portland, that I hope that we can come together on this and focus on what are the investments we want City Hall to be making to end displacement for low-income renters? What are the additional policies, whether it's zoning or whether it's the Portland Housing Bureau program, that can really address not just displacement, but again, creating affordable housing options for low-income. It's not even Portlanders or Metro Region folks. It's like we need listening sessions out in Woodburn, Vancouver, and Yamhill County now.
So in answer to the question, who is going to own those fourplexes? So first of all, who is RIP for? Is it for the current homeowner, or is it for the developer that buys that lot? It's for the developer that buys that lot, because they're the only ones that are going to be able to afford it, because upzoning increases the speculative value. So is this going to proliferate more friendly mom and pop landlords? Or is it going to accelerate what we're already seeing, which is large corporate investors that aren't just buying and developing one fourplex. They are mass producing these all over town. And in case there's any question about it, Wall Street is in the landlord business. And just in the last 3.5 years, large corporate investors spent almost $5.8 billion purchasing up existing multifamily housing in the Portland metro area. Over 26,000 units at an average cost of $190,000 per unit. That's almost half the cost that the Portland Housing Bureau is spending to, 50 units at a time. So trying to catch the flood of displacement with a paper cup. So we have to acknowledge that large corporate investors are here, and they are mass producing and proliferating financial, instruments for speculation and for rent profiteering.
One last comment on what Jim's point was, is that the bulk of these triplexes and fourplexes will be rentals. And that was basically the conclusion of the Johnson report, which again was the economists that the city BPS hired to analyze to do a financial model of this RIP plan. And their conclusion was that these would be rentals. They would be market rate rentals. They would be built out to the maximum size, whether it's 4,000 square feet on a R5 lot or whatever built to the maximum size and that they would be rental units. And one of the reasons, another reason that they're likely to be rental units is banks aren't that fond of 2-unit condos or even 3- and 4-unit condos. I mean, condos have a lot of issues, and banks are not as willing to loan to a buyer if they're buying a duplex that is basically condoized or a triplex that is condoized. So you've got that pressure as well.
Thank you. Okay, so we've run out of time. I know that Michael had one last thing he wanted to ask, and it's actually super relevant. It's how I usually like to close conversations like this. Is like, what is the next step with this? What can we do? So I'm hesitant because I want to make time for Allison Wicks from Prosper Portland is here. A very important presentation, has been waiting very patiently. Another thing to remember is that these meetings are recorded and people can watch them, and they're also included in our newsletter. So if you guys have more information that you'd like to share with people, I can link you in that. And then if you're comfortable with having your contact information shared, if people have more questions, you can also do that. But that being said, if we can do it in 30 seconds each, what's a call to action? What is your individual call to action to people who are here?
So as Sabina mentioned earlier, the City Council will be hearing this in summer, so about September of this year. Portland for Everyone will be doing this. I'll be at Lents Neighborhood Association early April, and actually Portland Assembly tomorrow out here in Lents. And so we're continuing to make sure that folks, especially in Lents, in Brentwood, Darlington, and in East Montevilla, that we're working with low-income renters living in single-family homes, adding this low-income homeowners as well, to develop the kind of work. Please reach out to us, and I would say develop the recommendations to the bureaucracy to help improve the programs, the policies, in addition to the residential infill project.
That was not 30 seconds, and nor will mine. Can I talk to you? I'm timing you. So the call to action between now and then, at some point, neoliberal politics may just win, and the world is a strange place right now. So there's a couple of things in terms of a call to action. Number one, I put up earlier on the screen the URL that would point you to a playlist so that you can see for yourself some of the comments about displacement that are coming out of the very same committee that has been in the weeds with this policy all along. And between now and then, part of the missing gap is strong anti-displacement regulations. The Planning Sustainability Committee said, boy, we sure hope that the city does something because we can't do it here. And unless they do, boy, it's sure going to be messy. So for me personally, a call to action that not only sort of attends to some of this, but other things is what I keep mentioning, is that, I would also like to see some support for a reasonable, sort of a soundness threshold, restricting the demolition of sound habitable housing unless it meets strict exception criteria tied to the HUD standard of affordability and needed housing. Needed housing is so much different than demand that is created by capital investment. So how many people do need certain housing at certain price points? And if we have some sort of threshold and some protective measures that don't have to be tethered to RIF, that by the time it gets implemented, maybe we can kind of recalibrate and put in place some of those protective measures that keep people housed and that mandate affordability and force developers to pick the weeds.
I guess I would just say continue to educate yourself, and painful as it is, that means getting on the BPS website and looking at the documents that came out in February of 2019, which is the latest iteration of RIP. But there's something even more that you can do before RIP comes up before City Council, and that's watch the state housing bills that are in play right now. The worst of the worst is Senate Bill 10, which would make RIP look like nothing. It basically would allow apartment complexes everywhere within anywhere between a quarter mile and a half a mile of any kind of rapid transit, and just mean the max, you know, I mean, even a rapid, high-service bus line. So Senate Bill 10 is to watch, and then also HB 2001, House Bill 2001, which is basically ripped for the whole state of Oregon. It would allow fourplexes anywhere in any town over 50,000. They keep changing, well, they keep changing the level, but yeah, anything except for really small towns. And so those are in play right now. Hearings are going on. You need to look at the state legislative sites and get your letters in about those, whichever side you're on.
Don't hand that back. She'll get so mad.
Thank you so much. And without further ado, I'll turn it over to to Allison from Prosper Portland with the urban renewal area budget for the fiscal year 2019-2020. And Allison will present, but she's also really looking for input tonight and beyond tonight.
Can you help me with handout?
Yeah, and we compared, so we compared. And then we also took out the boxes. So we had to, that's really the interviews that we had, and then we vetted that against the housing policy.
So as Sabina's handing those out, my name is Allison Wicks. I'm with Prosper Portland, and I'm here tonight to talk about the Prosper Portland fiscal year 1920 budget. Very exciting. Thank you for your time. It is a pretty detailed and kind of a line-by-line conversation that I want to have tonight, so that's part of the handouts that are going around. I will say I put my cards on the table over here, so if you have questions, if you get home and you've really had more time to digest the materials, please feel free to contact me, and if you don't, or if we don't kind of get to everything tonight, and if you don't feel like you were able to participate, please follow up with me. So there's 25 copies of the presentation, so that's actually fine that there's no PowerPoint. And then a handout, which is the Lents Neighborhood budget line by line, and also an instructional manual of how to read the budget. So this is a process that Prosper Portland does annually. In November, we convened a budget advisory committee that has representation from business and industry groups and neighborhood groups from around the city. And then and that group went a deep dive into every urban renewal area and our general fund budget as well. And then now each of our urban renewal areas are gathering input from community organizations as well. So the Lents budget has already also been reviewed at the East Portland Action Plan Economic Development Subcommittee, and then here tonight. So overall, Prosper Portland's goals and budgets are guided by our strategic plan, and in Lents, also the Lents 5-year action plan. So our strategic plan has the goal of building an equitable economy with access to high-quality jobs, fostering wealth creation within communities of color and low-income neighborhoods, forming 21st century civic networks, institutions, and partnerships, creating healthy, complete neighborhoods, and effective stewardship of public resources. So for those of you that are just getting PowerPoints, I'm on slide number 6, an overview of how tax increment financing works. So when an urban renewal area is formed, the property taxes are capped at that level, and once that was 1998. Any increment is then sent into the urban renewal area. When a district closes and is fully retired, then those property taxes start going back to the other taxing jurisdictions within the district. So schools, fire, etc. The next slide is a Overview of the Prosper Portland budget in its entirety for the next 5 years. So that's $457 million. About half of that will go through to property redevelopment across all of the urban renewal areas in Portland, and about 35% will go directly to the Portland Housing Bureau for affordable housing, and 6% will go to infrastructure projects like parks or street improvements. The next slide looks at just the fiscal year 18-19 or fiscal year 19-20 budget for all of Prosper Portland. And it shows how the 3 categories that we separate our budget into. So grants and infrastructure are funds that we don't expect to see a financial return on, or something we spend once. Mission-related investments are something that we like to see a 2.5% return on, and then financial first investments are something we're looking at for a 6% return on, so that's something that as funds are returned are able to be reinvested. So then the next 2 slides really start highlighting the Lents urban renewal area. So reviewing what our 19-20 budget, our 18-19 budget priorities were, and then the 19-20 budget priorities. And if you're following along on this sheet, this is when we're kind of going to start walking through the different fiscal years. So key activities in 18-19 included the completion of Lents Town Center Phase 1. So that is the Woody Guthrie project, which I just saw the red siding going up when I was coming in today. So that's awesome to see that getting so close to completion, as well as the Asian Health and Service Center. It also has supported community livability grants. For example, we'll be working with Rose Community Development and the Lents Youth Initiative to do art installation this summer. And then also the Prosperity Improvement Program, which is our grant program for small business owners. So it's a matching grant program to improve storefronts and also to do tenant improvements. The example on here is Atlas Pizza at 66th and Foster. And then, so this is fiscal year 19-20 starts in July, so we are looking for input on our budget for the next year. As of right now, we've identified priorities of the Leach Botanical Garden, so contributing to the upper garden renovation. Lents Town Center Phase 2, so that's when you've seen me here before talking about the property at 92nd and Herald, as well as the property where Zoigel House is, so investing in that project. And then a continuation of the Community Livability Grant Program and the Prosperity Investment Program, or PIP program. So our grant programs for nonprofits and businesses. So the next few slides are the same numbers that you would see in the spreadsheet handout as well. Kind of the first green total on here is the total that goes to the Portland Housing Bureau. So that's, we are just simply a pass-through for funding to the Portland Housing Bureau. The next is the infrastructure total. So in the next 2 fiscal years, or in the past fiscal year and the next fiscal year, we have investments in the Foster Road streetscape improvement, so funding a small portion of that along with the Portland Bureau of Transportation, and then the Leach Botanical Gardens project with Portland Parks and Recreation. For redevelopment investments, the $11 million is the funding that's for Woody Guthrie and Asian Health and Service Center, and then we have $10 million earmarked for the 92nd and Herald project, so working towards a development agreement with Palindrome Communities this spring on that. We have funds to work with pre-development work for our other properties that we own within the town center. There was $20,000 for the Lents Stabilization and Job Creation Project. It was the Oregon Solutions project that completed this last year. So that was looking at business redevelopment opportunities within the industrial area in East Foster. And then also funds for the Community Livability Grant Program, which is a competitive annual grant program for nonprofit organizations. So those applications open every fall. And then also for the Prosperity Investment Program. So those are typically maximum of $50,000, 50-50 matching grant for small business owners to improve windows, doors, or do other internal improvements to their space, or for a property owner to do it for their tenant. And then the last category is economic development initiatives. So this is around business development, which can fund an economic development study. Lean manufacturing, which is a program through the Oregon Manufacturing Extension Partnership to do efficiency operations within a manufacturing business. So that's grants available for a business within the Lents URA that wants to access that program. And then business finance is business loans for businesses that can do operations, equipment, and working capital. That's it. That was a lot. Very quick. But I'm interested in your comments, feedbacks, or just kind of overall thoughts on the Lents Urban Renewal Area budget.
Yeah, I've got a comment. Looking at this chart in the urban renewal money,
Yes.
you have this big green triangle up here, which is the increment that goes to the urban renewal program.
Yes.
What you left out was that every penny of that money otherwise would have gone to police, fire, schools, and maybe that's why we have to pass these school bonds, because you guys have taken the money that the schools would otherwise get. Now, you'd like to talk about, after 30 years of stealing this tax money from basic services, all of a sudden you get this big windfall when the urban renewal district closes down. The problem is you never get enough money to make up for the money you took in the first place. Any comment?
I think that's really accurate, that the funds that come into Prosper Portland do come from other taxing jurisdictions. So that's all I can say.
Thank you.
So the agenda identifies the potential plaza. I don't know if you covered that. Could you speak on that point?
Yeah, so I'm really here to talk about the Lents URA budget tonight, but I was also talking to Sabina about the Lentstown Center Phase 2 project, which is putting together the agenda. So that project, we've done a handful of community outreach meetings since last fall. The most recent was in February of this year, and we've gathered a lot of community input on what the community wants to see around public benefits for that project, one of which is a plaza concept. I will be taking a set of program options to the Prosper Portland Board project moving forward early next year. Yep. It's 92nd and Herald is the location. So it's the Waddles Boys and Girls Club, the Lents Little League Field, and the Bakery Blocks building, which is where the Zoico House Brewing is, just north of the brewery.
For that 92nd Herald property, the question is of how much of the housing there will be in support of the workforce. That's a critical issue. Just because you keep pushing out of the city those people who need to work. And this is one of the last significant pieces of property in this part of the city that can do something about affordable housing that supports the workforce. You have the transit network set up, but if you put that as a bunch of market rate housing, then you're going to undermine, you'll eventually strangle the economic engine that supports the center of the city.
Okay, thank you.
I have said at many meetings.
Yeah.
It's always been like that.
Yeah, no, it's really good to hear. Thank you.
I was just wondering if there's been any talks or plans about the potential of extending the URA so that additional work can be done in the floodplain area and, environmental mitigation, cleanup, intensifying the use of the industrial areas to supply more jobs.
I think that's really good feedback to have. The urban renewal area is scheduled to have its last date to issue debt in 2020. I think we do plan to reach maximum indebtedness before that date. So it would be a question of programming any additional funds towards the East Foster area. Is what I'm hearing.
Anyone else?
Again, please feel free if you get home and just are staying, can't fall asleep at night, worrying about the Lents Urban Renewal Area budget. Please give me a call or send me an email. Really interested in any additional feedback that you have. Yeah.
Thank you. And Allison's card is right where the sign-in sheet is. Okay, so with that, all we have left to do at this point is approve minutes from last time's meeting. I don't see any of them left over there, so I assume people took them because you wanted to read over them and participate in this process. So if you were here last time and you had a chance to look over the minutes, I have 2 extra ones if anyone still wants a copy. These are the proposed minutes from February's general membership meeting, and I'm going to move to approve them unless anyone has any changes that they would like to make. And we have to take a vote on that too. So.
I second the motion.
Marcy seconded the motion. I'm not sure how many people are participating in this. So I guess if you are in favor of approving the minutes as they are, please raise your hand. Okay, so we have, keep your hands up so you can count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. We have 11 in favor. If you are against approving the minutes, raise your hand. Okay, no one's against. And if you're abstaining, please also raise your hand because we have to count abstentions too. Thank you. And keep them up. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 abstentions. Okay, so with that it passes. The minutes are approved. Thank you. All right, thanks everyone for coming. And if you left your email, I will add you to our newsletter. If you haven't left your email and you'd like to be added to our newsletter, just go ahead and put it on the sign-in sheet. And if you haven't signed in, please sign in because that really helps us. Meeting adjourned.